Hello everyone, my topic is going to be the parks and the Palace of Versailles. I'm going to be going over the history of the palace and the gardens and how it became what it is. I'm also going to talk about its relevance to the French Revolution, as well as what the palace is now and how it is maintained. Before I begin, I do want to apologize if you guys can hear my son screaming in the other room. He's with his dad and doesn't want to go to bed. So, let me begin. The palace, it started in Versailles as a hunting lodge, but during the reign of King Louis XIII, he had used it as a sporting retreat and then slowly evolved it throughout his lifetime into the Grand Palace of what it is today. It was during the reign of Louis XIV, though, his son, that the gardens became what it was. Louis XIV, also declared himself the Sun King, and he made the palace designed to take in the entire horizon. None of the buildings were allowed to block the view. None of the trees were allowed to block the view of the horizon. Everything was meant to take in the horizon. It wasn't until Louis XVI was ruling. It was his wife, Maria Antoinette, who helped design the garden into an English style, but mostly it still had a lot of the design from Louis XIV. A lot of the credit for the designs goes to the actual architects. I'm probably going to say their names wrong, but it was Jules Hardon-Monstart, who was the architect and the designer of the fountains and stuff seen in the garden, and it was André Lenotte who designed the gardens itself. Of course, the Sun King was the one who told them what he wanted and how he wanted it, but it was Jules Hardon-Monstart and André Lenotte who actually did the physical work, of course. In the French Revolution, the whole revolution started because King Louis XVI had called an Estates General. And in the Estates General, there was people from each estate coming to meet to talk about the taxes and how they were in debt and stuff from the war that they had just fought. So during the Estates General, there was supposed to be, I believe, 600 common people from the Third Estate that were meant to be there. And that's kind of what kicked off the whole revolution, is that the common people, the Third Estate, were realizing that they were going to have a voice. And they wanted something to be done about that, or about the things that were going on. So when the Estates was called, they had a document or a pamphlet, they went around and they were like, well, this is what we are. We are the common people. And they're realizing that without the common people, the wealthy people wouldn't have anything that they had. They wouldn't have the clothes, the chairs that they sat on, the food on their table. And the common people used that to their advantage, and it just kind of kicked off the revolution. Also, during the revolution, as soon as King Louis XVI was able to calm the men down and give them rights, basically, the women stepped up because they wanted rights as well. And it was in October of 1789, that the women marched from Paris to Versailles and stormed the castle and demanded rights for women as well. And they got their rights and everything, and one event kind of led to another. After that, there was other outbreaks and wars, and people still wanted more rights, more what's it called? more freedom, basically. They didn't want to be under a monarchy. And actually, after Louis XVI, there was no more kings. There was no more monarchy. It was changed after that. So now after the war, after the revolution, and there's no more monarchy, the palace was no longer occupied by a king. So it is just a palace now, and it is turned into a museum, basically, where tourists and localists, they get to go every day and actually see the inside of the castle and tour it and see the gardens and the fountains and everything. The palace was deemed a historical monument, which means it can never be torn down. It must be maintained, and the state owns it. So France owns the palace now. And they make sure it has all the funds and everything that it needs to be taken care of. The gardens, they are actually still working on, the fountains are still using the same plumbing systems, irrigation systems, that were first put in place. So they still have all that going on. Anything that goes wrong in the castle, they try minorly to fix it. Like, they fix it, but they try to keep everything in the same condition that it was in when Louis XIII made the palace a palace. So that's kind of my presentation. It was really brief. I just kind of went over, like I said, the history of the palace, how it became the palace. Louis XIII decided he didn't want to use it as a sporting retreat anymore. He wanted it to be his palace. And it was a palace for a royal family between the reigns of Louis XIII all the way to Louis XVI, when the French Revolution ended and there was no more monarchy. It also has its significance in the French Revolution, the people going and storming it, the States General being called, and they were all supposed to meet in the Palace of Versailles as well, to meet in front of the king. So there's that, and now it's just a museum that if you ever get a chance to go to France and get to go on a tour of this place, it would be really cool. Thank you for watching.